The anime begins by showing us the depths of a dungeon, where a man named Orhun is dealing with several monsters, skillfully wielding his sword. The guy manages to get rid of several monsters in just a few seconds, which makes him think he hasn't gotten as out of shape as he thought and can still become a swordsman, much like myself after seeing all the weight I gained after Christmas. When a group of goblins appears, Orhun decides it's also time to try out some support magic. He casts Strength Up on himself. It's a support magic that enhances the physical abilities of its targets or strengthens their equipment. The caster can not only utilize it to bolster his party members, but he can also apply it to himself, thereby allowing him to defeat numerous goblins with great ease. Spells that boost both attack and defense are an absolute necessity for any party. Just when Orhun thinks it's all over, more goblins appear, so he attacks them without hesitation and defeats them in a matter of seconds. Because ultimately his magic also has a significant weakness, time, given that he can only use it for precisely 3 minutes. When more goblins show up, Orhun uses Strength Up on himself again, taking out as many as he can. Support magic doesn't last forever, and each individual's magic resistance changes how long it stays active. In his case, it lasts 180 seconds, 3 minutes, so he has to keep a close eye on the battle and cast the spell at just the right moment, like in Clash Royale. Enchanters who rely on support magic are always in a race against time and typically wouldn't attempt to use it while also wielding a sword. However, in his case, it's something he's decided to do because he's a total badass, and that allows him to defeat the goblins in the remaining 3 seconds of his support magic. In another scene, we see what happened before, when Oliver, the hero's party leader, asks him to leave the team. Orhun clearly hadn't anticipated this. In fact, he even thought it was some kind of prank, given that Oliver and he were childhood friends, comrades who had practically always been together. Oliver confesses he's given him numerous chances up to this point because they share the same hometown. However, he states that from now on, Orhun won't be able to keep pace with the rest of the group. Finally, another party member urges Oliver to get to the point and reveal the truth. The other guy named Derek agrees and tells him to just tell Orhun that he's simply slowing them down. Orhun just can't believe how harshly they're treating him, but Oliver isn't backing down. He bluntly tells Orhun he's simply not strong enough and must leave the hero's party. Orhun attempts to process the situation, as the party he and Oliver formed 8 years prior achieved S rank in just a few short years. They were the first to reach the 94th floor of the Great Southern Dungeon, and people started calling them the Heroes Party because of it. Orhun admits that he might not be strong enough, but he clarifies that at this rate the same can be said for all of them. Oliver cuts him off, saying they didn't understand how important it was to have an enchanter capable of using support magic. However, during last month's joint raid, they witnessed the incredible prowess of the enchanters from the other S-rank party. This starkly highlighted the feebleness of his own support magic. Orhun reminds them that he was supposed to be a swordsman and that's why he created his own original magic. Derek immediately shuts him down, saying he only became one because Oliver was better with the sword than he was. Annalie agrees and tells him that due to his poor aptitude for magic, he's in no position to complain. Orhun reminds them they needed an enchanter, so he became one because he had the greatest aptitude for it. He has invented his own type of magic to make up for his shortcomings, and they've survived even on the deepest floors of the dungeon because of it. Oliver interrupts him to inform him that they've already found a replacement enchanter. Orhun cannot conceal his shock and the deep hurt he feels from hearing that, so Oliver averts his gaze and offers an apology, stating that this is simply how things will proceed from this moment forward. Annalie doesn't seem sorry at all and cheerfully says that they are the hero's party, so they have to keep moving forward, which they can't do with him on the team. Damn old hag, Orhun cannot believe this is how he is being treated after all they have been through. But it's clear there's no longer a place for him in the party, so he just thanks them for everything and leaves. Annalie remains unsatisfied and proceeds to list all the various things he supposedly can't do, from magic to sword combat. Again, damn old hag. She admits he can do many things, but only at an A rank level, and yet he was always telling them what to do, which irritated them. Orhun pauses for a moment before leaving, and Annalie tells him that people like him are usually called Jack-of-All-Trades. Back in the present, Orhun defeats another goblin after remembering those words, and now he's more determined than ever to be both a swordsman and an enchanter. He's adaptable enough to take on It is a fresh new style that he developed, which combines both aspects. That way, no one will call him a jack-of-all-trades again, and one day he'll be an adventurer who can do it all. It is truly incredible how far the desire to prove someone wrong can take you in life. After defeating the monsters, he registers his presence with the teleportation crystal so he can easily start from the 7th floor next time. Before leaving, he sees an adventurer group running away in terror, saying there were too many orcs to handle. Orhun attempts to remain uninvolved, but upon hearing they abandon the girl to save themselves, he resolutely decides to intervene. He understands he shouldn't interfere, knowing she merely had bad luck joining that specific group, yet he also deeply comprehends the pain of being deserted. Orhun walks up to the group and reprimands them for making excuses instead of going to rescue that girl, but one of them gets defensive and says that even if he himself had stayed, he couldn't have saved her alone. The guy tries to throw a thoughtless punch, but Orhun swiftly knocks him down and then asks the others where they abandoned that girl to die. Meanwhile, we see the poor girl surrounded by dangerous orcs and she doesn't know what to do. Overwhelmed with panic, she quickly casts a magic barrier to fend them off, yet she understands it won't hold for long, and there's no way she can face so many foes by herself. The girl screams for help as the barrier shatters, and fortunately, Orhun arrives just then, unleashing an aerial shock to attack the orcs, launching them into the air with a forceful gust of wind. He stands in front of the girl to protect her, and without hesitation uses his support magic to strengthen his body. Then, using his love technique, he swiftly defeats the first orc with his sword. The girl watches him in amazement, wondering if he's a swordsman or an enchanter. Then Orhun uses Shard Swap, which allows him to easily slice one of the orcs in two. The girl is visibly awestruck, having never witnessed such a unique fighting style prior to this moment. Orhun acknowledges the numerous orcs, grasping why a lower-ranked group would retreat. However, he knows he can handle them by himself. In a matter of seconds, Orhun takes out all the orcs and then asks the girl if she is okay. She's still attempting to process the sheer extent of his strength, and at that very moment she's simply profoundly grateful to still be alive, even though she obviously can't prevent the tears from freely flowing afterward. Once she calms down, they both finally leave the dungeon, and before he goes, the girl decides to thank him properly and introduces herself as Sophia Claudel. The last name certainly sounds familiar to Orhun, and he also recognizes the emblem on her cloak. Still, he decides not to mention it and chooses to introduce himself as well. Then Sophia shyly asks him if he would be willing to join her for dinner as a token of her gratitude. Orhun is clearly surprised and tries to tell her he didn't save her expecting any gratitude. Still, Sophia insists, and he has no choice but to walk her back to the city. When they arrive, he notices she's leading him to one of the rabbits' shops, which has the same emblem as her cloak. With that crucial detail, Orhun at last confirms that Sophia is indeed part of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits, one of the premier guilds within the kingdom of Nojitand. The Night Sky Silver Rabbits rank among the kingdom's most popular clans, a fact he confirmed during last month's collaborative raid. As soon as they enter the place, Sophia is surprised to see her sister there, though Orhun is just as shocked. Sophia's sister is clearly happy to see her, but she's not at all pleased to see Orhun, immediately getting defensive and saying it's too soon for her to have a boyfriend. Sophia gets so flustered that she can't explain anything, but her surprise deepens even further when she discovers that the two of them are already acquainted. Orhun recognizes her as Selma Claudel, the S-rank group leader of the powerful Night Sky Silver Rabbits, and the most potent enchanter on the continent. She was the one who elevated enchanters to prominence and pioneered the revolutionary idea that different group members should assume distinct roles, attackers to take down enemies, defenders to absorb the blows, and supporters to aid from the rear, forever changing the dynamics of adventurer groups. Splitting the adventurer group into those three roles was her idea, and it forever changed how adventurers think when going into dungeons. The hero's party is no exception, which is why he had to switch from being a swordsman to an enchanter. He also encountered her during last month's raid, leading Oliver and the others to decide to get rid of him. However, he's baffled as to why she's currently upset with him. If anything, it should be the other way around, but Selma makes it very clear when she asks if he's trying to go after her 14-year-old sister. With this, Orhun immediately grasps the situation, realizing it's a clear misunderstanding. He tries to explain that her sister simply invited him to dinner, and his intentions are completely pure, to eat and then go to sleep, nothing more. Despite his earnest attempt to rectify the situation, Selma only became even more enraged, demanding to know if he genuinely believed Sophia wasn't worthy of him. Orhun begins to feel a bit annoyed, as that's not at all what he intended to say. However, Sophia quickly steps in, asking her sister not to be rude to the man who saved her life. Selma's attitude instantly shifts to concern, and she asks if she went into the dungeon alone. Sophia has no choice but to confess, so Selma reminds her that in 2 days they'll be entering the Great Dungeon and that she had asked her to stay put for just 2 days. Orhun now realizes that Sophia ventured into the dungeon without informing her clan, yet as she appears unharmed, Selma chooses not to make a big deal out of it. Now that she knows Orhun saved her sister, Selma thanks him and apologizes for being so rude. Aside from that, she says she hasn't seen him since the raid, and this is their first real talk. Sophia is still a bit surprised that they know each other, so her sister explains that they are both charmers and were assigned together during last month's raid. Orhun clarifies that she took the lead and he just helped, but Selma tells him he was actually a big help and it was just what she expected from him. Sophia comments that Selma talks as if she's known him for a long time, but Selma is surprised that she doesn't know who he is. She informs her that he is a member of the hero's party, which makes Sophia immediately panic. Orhun asks her not to get so worked up and tells them he's no longer a hero because he left his party just yesterday. Selma is clearly shocked by this and doesn't understand how they could let someone like him go. Orhun tells her they had their reasons and that they both agreed to it. What you say when your girlfriend dumps you to save face, so right now he is available. Selma's instantly interested, and Orhun wonders if she'll recruit him for the Silver Rabbits. Before she can speak, he tells her he doesn't want to be in a clan or a party for a while. Selma replies that he's got the wrong idea and clarifies that she has the perfect job for him. She wants him to go with her clan tomorrow on a training expedition and will make sure he gets paid. Just as the name indicates, it's about instructing the new recruits, and he can certainly consider it as on-the-job training. An A-rank group or even higher will lead the new recruits, and they will spend 3 days descending 50 floors deep into the large southern dungeon. Orhun is quite surprised to hear it will only be 3 days, considering even the best adventurers would typically take 6 months to a year. So, it's a pretty extreme schedule. Selma admits that it is, but clarifies it's not impossible if they take the shortest route, and that the sponsors are really pushing for it. Orhun remarks that the Silver Rabbits are in a difficult spot, but what they're suggesting is so ludicrous they truly should have been able to decline their sponsors' demands. If they're doing it anyway, there must be another reason. Without thinking too hard, Orhun comes to a conclusion. If the new recruits, who couldn't defeat a floor boss on their own, can explore the deepest floors, it will strengthen the clan as a whole. Selma is visibly taken aback that he deduced this with merely a fraction of what she revealed, which in itself suggests to her that his intellect surpasses her initial assessment. Within dungeons, adventurers are required to defeat the floor bosses, which emerge every 10 levels in order to delve deeper into the dungeon. It is quite common for new recruits to get injured or even die during these battles. However, if a seasoned adventurer defeats the boss, they only need to register their progress with the next floor crystal to continue their descent. That's why she wants him to go with them. Orhun mentions it sounds like a very important mission for the Silver Rabbits, so he asks if it's really okay for an outsider like him to participate. Selma kicks his hands without hesitation and tells him that she sincerely respects him. Orhun is once again surprised because he can't believe Selma respects him as a charmer. He thought she didn't even remember him. This clearly makes him happy, but he doesn't understand why, since he was kicked out of the hero's party for being too weak and because his magic was inferior to hers during the raid. He would definitely regret it if he had to go back to being a charmer after what just happened to him, so he rejects her proposal, saying he has other plans. Sophia quickly jumps in and says she'll be going too, so she'd be really happy if he came with her. Orhun's resolve wavers for a moment when he sees her pleading expression, so he tells her he'll think about it. Before leaving, he clarifies that he has retrained as a swordsman, so even though she seems to respect him as a charmer, if he goes, it will be as a swordsman. Selma is clearly surprised by this information and asks him why he did that. Orhun understands her surprise, but he's already made up his mind and it's something he's not willing to give up on. Selma decides to accept it, even if she doesn't fully get it, because deep down she believes that if things get tough, he'll go back to his main role as a charmer. She tells him to be at the Silver Rabbits headquarters the next morning if he decides to go, and with that their conversation ends. Orhun decides to visit an old man who tells him it's been another busy day at his shop. Orhun is deeply pleased to hear he's doing well, and the old man reminds him it's all thanks to him promoting the shop after becoming a high-level adventurer. Orhun's expression saddens at this, and he tells him he's no longer a member of the hero's party, so he can't promote it anymore. After all, now that he's not a hero, no one will listen to anything he says. Yet, the old man says he's grateful, always has been, and always will be, because he's still Orhun, hero or not. Orhun is deeply moved, unable to understand how anyone could be thankful to someone like him. The old man reminds him that he knows what Orhun has accomplished and how hard he has toiled, and therefore he is sure to hear even more words of gratitude directed at him from this moment forward. Those words mean there are people who need him, so he must treasure them every time he hears them. For him, things are just getting started, so he just has to do what he thinks is best, whether he lives for himself or helps others. The old man will stand by his side no matter what. Orhun fights back tears at his words, and all he can do is express his gratitude, for now he truly knows what he must do. The next morning he meets Selma at the Silver Rabbit's headquarters, just as she told him the day before. She is clearly pleased to see him there and asks him to follow her inside right away. As they walk, she comments that he looks much more lively than the day before, so she assumes he feels relieved to have left the hero's party. Orhun smiles back and admits it's something like that, though he doesn't give details, knowing he doesn't need to. Once they finally enter, Vince Briers, who is the esteemed leader of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits, warmly welcomes Orhun, stating that he has already heard a great deal about him. Orhun introduces himself properly and says it's an honor to meet the leader of such a famous clan. Vince clarifies that there's no need to be so stiff, since he's heard Orhun left the heroes' party and they don't need to waste time trying to guess what the other is really thinking. Orhun agrees, stating he'd first appreciate hearing more about this trading expedition, prompting Vince to ask Selma for an explanation. Once they're settled, Selma informs him they'll be going from floor 1 to floor 51 of the Great Dungeon in 3 days. Specifically, they'll be ending day 1 at floor 21, day 2 at floor 36, and so on and so forth. The scene changes to a flashback where Selma informs Vince that Orhun has left the heroes' party. Vince comments that's a huge loss for them, because without him, they won't be nearly as strong. Selma agrees, saying his support magic took them to a level they couldn't have otherwise reached. Orhun's support magic effects are indeed weaker than average, but his casting speed is truly incredible. It's at least 4 times faster than hers. Moreover, he utilizes numerous original spells. His keen ability to analyze situations, accurately predict subsequent actions, and deliver timely magical support equips him with every essential skill an enchanter requires. With his departure, the heroes' party will become much weaker, and now it's more likely the Silver Rabbits will return to the top. Vince mentions he heard about Orhun during their joint raid, but he still finds it quite difficult to truly believe it. Selma tells him that enchanters frequently don't receive the recognition they're due, and despite her fame, she feels people overvalue her, whereas genuinely powerful individuals like Orhun don't stand out. Back in the present, Orhun understands there are basically 10 groups of novices and 5 escorts, including himself and Selma. The novice groups will take turns fighting monsters, and if anything out of the ordinary happens, the escorts will take over. Selma confirms this, and Orhun decides to ask why there are only 5 escorts. After all, if this extreme schedule is genuinely necessary, it would be logical to lessen the risk by having several A-rank parties accompany the novices for support. Selma and Vince exchange looks for a moment, and after a brief hesitation, she explains that their objective is to guide the novices to floor 51. However, a little extra pressure will aid their growth. According to her, this is the perfect opportunity for them to get that experience, but Orhun knows that's not the real reason. Achieving this is incredibly important to them, so there must be another reason, but it seems they won't tell an outsider like him. Orhun decides not to question further, finally agreeing to help. Vince thanks him and says he'll receive 2 gold coins up front and 10 more if the mission is successful. Orhun reluctantly accepts but asks if that isn't a bit excessive since it's equivalent to a whole year of living expenses. Selma tells him they simply value him that much, and with that she ends the conversation. Orhun is a little surprised they value him so highly, but it clearly makes him happy, so he decides he'll do his best. The next day, the clan prepares for the expedition at the entrance to the Great Dungeon. Selma and Zofia greet Orhun as soon as he arrives, and he notices Zofia's outfit is different from the last time he saw her. He assumes it's some kind of uniform for novices but decides to compliment her, saying it looks good on her. This catches Zofia off guard, and Selma's expression immediately turns to horror, noting how flustered and happy her younger sister looks. She starts considering she might have to kill an enchanter. Defensively, she tells Orhun he seems to know how to flatter a lady, so she wants to know if he has a girlfriend or something. Orhun quickly denies it, explaining that some of the hero's party members were women, so his ease in speaking with girls likely stems from that experience. Selma immediately backs down since they all lived in the same mansion, so what he's saying is surely true. Zofia gets curious and asks where he's living now, so Orhun tells her he's staying at an inn for the time being, though he knows he'll have to find a place soon. Selma panics again and questions Zofia for asking such a question, wanting to know if she plans to go visit him. Zofia quickly denies it, clearly embarrassed, and explains she was just curious. Once Selma manages to compose herself, she asks Orhun why he's standing so far from the rest of the group. Orhun tells her that he's an outsider, so he thought he might make the novices nervous. Selma admits they all look tense right now, so she's going to ask for his help to loosen them up a bit. Without wasting any time, she asks him to follow her and tells Zofia to go find her group. Selma introduces Orhun to the 3 escorts for the expedition and guarantees them that he's strong. Knowing that she is vouching for him, the escorts are sure they can trust Orhun. Orhun gets somewhat nervous and requests Selma not to raise such high expectations about him, yet she simply smiles and advises him against being so modest. Orhun introduces himself as a frontline attacker, and then each of the escorts introduces themselves. The one with black hair introduces himself as Antung and says he's a defender. The blonde one says his name is Bernard, also a defender. And finally, the girl says her name is Kathy and she's a healer. Orhun notes that leaves Selma and himself, an attacker and an enchanter. It's a balanced party, but if he hadn't come, he wonders if they would have made someone else fill the attacker role too. That makes him think there's definitely something strange about all this, though he still hasn't figured out what it is. Selma sees the doubt on his face and for a moment recalls the conversation she had with Vince earlier. He told her he understood how she felt about losing such a powerful ace, but that Orhun is supposed to be an enchanter just like her. She couldn't allow him to be part of the main team, and she was already aware of that. Selma can't help but feel they haven't moved a single step forward since last year. They're still stuck in a rut and can't reclaim what they lost. That's why she turned to Orhun for help, but he volunteered himself as a swordsman. If he can't perform as a frontline attacker, then things certainly won't turn out the way she had expected. Orhun notices Selma's concern for a moment, but she quickly returns to normal and tells everyone they have 3 days of hard work ahead of them. She then takes Orhun to greet the rookies and decides to give a speech before the expedition. Selma tells all the rookies that today, they begin their descent to the 51st floor of the Grand Dungeon. Everyone looks incredibly tense, so she inquires if they are afraid of venturing into the Grand Dungeon's intermediate floors this early. Not waiting for a reply, she assures them not to worry as she's brought powerful backup just in case. Then Selma introduces Orhun, explaining that he's made it all the way to the 94th floor, a depth even they haven't reached yet. The sudden introduction truly caught Orhun off guard, and all the rookies begin murmuring about him, clearly impressed. Selma informs them that to truly become dungeon explorers, they need to get acquainted with him, as he was once a member of the esteemed Heroes Party and possesses unparalleled knowledge of the Grand Dungeon. All the rookies are immediately blown away by that information, and it gets them even more excited. Meanwhile, Orhun turned completely pale, as he didn't expect Selma to expose him like that. Still, Selma doesn't regret it, because now all the rookies are excited to head into the dungeon. She instructs everyone to remain on standby until it's time to proceed, and then she goes to perform the final checks with the other escorts. When he can finally speak, Orhun tells Selma she got a bit carried away during her speech. Selma doesn't think so, since he really did reach the 94th floor, and he can't deny it. She clarifies that a key part of her role is ensuring their relaxation so they can fully concentrate on the dungeon. Orhun has no way to argue with that, but he's still not comfortable with the situation. He only used the hero title to help the old man's shop, so he hopes this doesn't end up causing him trouble. Putting that aside, Selma tells him she wants him to escort Group 10, as they are her most promising rookies. If they can learn to work as a team, they can easily reach the intermediate floors, so she hopes he can help them with that. Orhun accepts the task, though he's not sure if she should be entrusting her star rookies to an outsider like him. When Orhun meets the members of Group 10, he notices Sophia is one of them and that there are only 3 rookies in total. This is clearly strange, so he even asks if someone is running late, but they tell him this is everyone. A party of just 3 people is quite uncommon, because the fewer members a group has, the more dangerous the situation becomes, especially for rookies. One of the boys notices his concern and quickly explains that there are only 3 of them because no one can keep up. Orhun is a little taken aback by his displayed confidence. He realizes they hold great expectations for him, yet seeing someone so young with such an attitude makes him concerned for their future. Setting that aside and knowing all members are present, Orhun asks them to introduce themselves. The boy quickly steps forward to go first, saying he's the group leader of Group 10, Logan Haywood, an enchanter, and the man who will one day surpass Selma herself. Orhun confirms once again how confident he is, but says nothing about it and lets the next member speak. The girl next to Logan introduces herself as Caroline England and says she's a defender. Orhun mentions she isn't wearing any armor despite being a defender and asks if she'll put it on once they enter the dungeon. Caroline looks a little disappointed, realizing he's asking the same question as everyone else. She explains she's an evasive defender, no armor or shield. If she dies, she dies. Orhun assumes that means she dodges instead of blocking, and Caroline confirms it, saying she doesn't want monsters to touch her, but she wants to kill a lot of them, so she chose to be a defender to get as close as possible. An evasive defender typically dodges using speed rather than relying on defense to block attacks. However, Orhun cautions her that achieving this is quite challenging until one gains sufficient combat experience. Logan then interjects, mentioning that everyone in the clan had already attempted to advise her, but she simply disregarded their warnings. Caroline retorts that he doesn't listen to what the instructors say either, but Logan says he doesn't have to because he's just that good. Sophia quickly attempts to halt their disagreement, but Orhun has already figured out he's been assigned to the problematic bunch. And lastly, even though they're already acquainted, Sophia introduces herself as a rearguard spellcaster. Orhun smiles. What she said was normal, and it relieved him there's someone normal in this group. Still, he knows this mission seems pretty complicated, especially since Logan and Caroline are still arguing even now. When the time finally comes, they begin their descent into the dungeon, and even though they were making such a racket outside, they fall completely silent the moment they step inside. As they move forward, Caroline decides to ask him why someone from the heroes' party is on this expedition. She wants to know if that means they no longer see her clan as rivals, but Orhun simply asks if she hadn't heard what Selma said, reminding her that he was once a member. Caroline immediately asks why he left, since the heroes' party is admired by all, and it would be a true shame to depart. Orhun is starting to get a little tired because she won't drop the subject, though she doesn't seem to mean any harm. But he just can't deal with people like that. And to his misfortune, Caroline presses even harder, continuing to grill him about it. Orhun tells her that's none of her business, so Caroline changes the subject and asks him if they recall Sophia mentioning an incredible person would join them. Sophia gets a bit nervous, not expecting it to be brought up, but admits he is indeed the amazing guy she spoke of, as he had saved her life. He was strong, and she said he was part of the heroes' party. Her sister said they wouldn't have to worry at all if he was with them. Caroline tells her that in that case, she doesn't need to be so nervous since she has a hero with her. Orhun stays silent, knowing he's no longer a hero. But more importantly, he notes Caroline brought it up to soothe Sophia. That makes him think she might be more considerate of others than she lets on. After a while, some monsters start to approach just as expected, but the trap spells Orhun had set work perfectly and take care of them without any trouble. These spells are difficult for the enemy to detect until activated, making them an excellent method for dealing with monsters approaching from the rear guard without causing any delays. They don't have much time, and he doesn't want to waste it on unnecessary fights, so he'll keep setting trap spells as they move forward. After a while, the group reaches the 20th floor, and Orhun has been watching them fight, so he confirms he'll probably be fine for the rest of the training expedition. He thought Logan was just a conceited rookie, but he has real skill as an enchanter. If he can maintain that level in longer fights, he could easily work in an A-rank party, so he really is a genius. He loses points for being bad at giving orders, which is necessary for an enchanter, but he'll surely improve with more experience. On the other hand, Caroline's speed is as good as you'd expect from someone who wants to be an evasion-type defender. But there are two issues. First, when she sees a monster, she charges it directly, rather than the reverse. She wants to be a defender, so she should draw the enemy, but her fighting is scary. It's like she thinks she can't die. The other issue is she only uses 2 daggers, and though they suit her style, she might lack enough destructive power for this group. Lastly, Sophia isn't as impressive as the other two, yet she's stronger than a common rookie. She's a little passive, but that will change once she opens up more to her party members, and she has no major rookie flaws, so he is eager to see her improve. Soon after, the other escorts and rookie groups defeat the boss on the 20th floor, so they finally head to the 21st floor, just as planned. Selma asks them to register the floor on their guild card, concluding their day. Outside the Great Dungeon, Selma asks Orhun if he enjoyed escorting. Orhun tells her that just as she said, Party 10 has a lot of potential, but they aren't really working as a team, and he's especially worried about Caroline. Selma laughs nervously and tells him she's actually improved a lot, which only makes Orhun wonder what she was like before. Finally, they say their goodbyes. The next morning, Orhun is completely down in the dumps when he reads the newspaper and sees Oliver on the front page. The article is about the heroes' party and how they now have a new enchanter. In other words, his expulsion from the group is now public knowledge. Orhun slams the newspaper on the table, saying they have no idea how much this hurts. He wishes they'd at least waited until the training expedition was over and can't imagine what will happen when all the rookies read that paper. And if anyone does, he can see how that would change their opinion of him. Resigned, Orhun grabs his coat and leaves the inn, knowing there's no point in dwelling on it now, and nothing can be done. He decides to head to the meeting point, but as he's walking through town, a girl suddenly calls his name. Orhun stops dead in his tracks, recognizing that voice all too well. When he turns around, he sees Luna, a member of the heroes' party. He doesn't move from his spot, still in shock, so Luna is the one who approaches him, saying it's been a long time. When Orhun was in the heroes' party, even as the other members grew colder towards him, Luna always treated him the same as ever, no matter what. When he was kicked out, she was away on an errand back home, but he knows that if Luna had been there, things might have turned out differently. Orhun can't help but smile, realizing he still has some ties to the heroes' party. He asks if she needs something, but he's shocked when Luna suddenly asks him to come back to their party, saying they need his strength. Despite his initial surprise, Orhun knew she might ask that. as she always held him in high regard. Orhun tells her he doesn't think that's what the rest of the party wants, especially after seeing today's newspaper article. Apparently, Luna doesn't know what article he's talking about and admits she's actually asking on her own initiative. Still, she assures him that if he comes back with her, she'll do everything she can to convince the others. Orhun is surprised to realize Luna is serious about bringing him back. However, his expression turns sad because he knows it's too late now for so many reasons. Orhun tells her that after that article was published, he can't go back, and he doesn't want to now either. Luna sadly apologizes, not having seen today's paper, so she doesn't know what it says. Still, she takes his hands, reminds him they vowed to clear the great dungeon together. That statement visibly angers Orhun, who sharply pulls his hand away and reminds her they made that promise with Oliver, and it was Oliver who kicked him out, so that's never going to happen now. Luna's speechless, but before she can speak, Orhun apologizes and leaves without another word, leaving her alone. Deep down, Orhun longed for the three of them to stay as they always had been, to fulfill the promise they made as children, but there's no going back now, and no place for him there. Orhun heads to the Grand Dungeon for the expedition, but he's still thinking about what he read in the newspaper. As you may recall, that day's newspaper article stated he was expelled from the heroes' party due to his weakness, and although he knew this would eventually occur, he doesn't comprehend why it had to happen precisely now. He can't help but wonder just how many people will continue to trust him after reading that article, especially considering all the things Selma had said about him. Meanwhile, all the rookies on the expedition are discussing this, and Logan recalls Orhun's statement from yesterday that he chose to leave the party, but if he was actually expelled, the real story would be entirely different. Orhun finally arrives, and from the way the kids greet him, he can already tell everything is completely different from yesterday, though after all the nonsense Selma pulled in his name, he can understand why they're confused. Selma immediately runs up to him to apologize, saying she had no idea. Orhun smiles and tells her there's no reason to apologize and that if she can't pull herself together, their training expedition will be a failure. Selma insists, saying she used him too much as an inspiration for the new recruits yesterday, but she should have been more careful. Orhun reassures her that it's okay and clarifies that he's the one who should be apologizing for causing trouble by not being clear. He reassures her he'll support them throughout the dungeon expedition, so she must keep her head up, just as she always does. Bernard says it's still true that Orhun made it to the 94th floor, and even that alone is incredible. Kathy and Amton agree, saying they're not worried at all, and Selma acknowledges that he did an excellent job yesterday. Orhun decides to show them the same thing as always today, so he goes to his assigned group and greets them. Sophia immediately tells him that today's newspaper article is full of lies, and Caroline agrees, saying none of it matters. Logan, on the other hand, asks him if it's true, and Orhun admits that most of it is. This takes them by surprise, so Orhun tells them if they're asking if he was too weak, then the answer is indeed yes. That's why he's not the hero everyone expects now, and he wants to apologize for not telling them. Logan starts to wonder what's really going on, but Sophia stubbornly insists, saying Orhun was strong and took down over a dozen orcs in an instant, so she knows he's not that weak. Orhun expresses his gratitude for their trust and assures them he possesses sufficient strength to guide them to the 51st floor, at minimum. He's no longer a hero, but as Orhun Dura, a simple explorer, he swears he will protect them. So he wants them to give it their all in the dungeon raid, just like yesterday. Sophia and Caroline quickly agree, but Logan is still clearly very confused and feels a bit foolish for getting his hopes up. Once the expedition begins, they'll head to the Southern Grand Dungeon's 21st floor, knowing they must reach the 35th today. Orhun follows them closely, aware that the escorts won't give instructions for now, not until they reach the middle floors starting from floor 31. Until then, it'll be just like yesterday, with the new recruits taking the lead. Sophia and Caroline lead the way, defeating monsters until they reach the 29th floor, and Orhun praises them for their good work, glad to see they still trust him. After a while, they reach the 31st floor, so from this point on, Orhun will be the one giving orders, and he needs to stay sharp. He halts the group, informing them he perceives monsters up ahead, thus requesting their preparedness. The girls follow his instructions, but Logan remains silent and still, and several goblins begin to approach. Orhun orders Caroline to draw the goblins' attention, so she runs straight at them with her daggers, just like always. Then, Orhun tells Sophia to handle the orcs in the rear and asks Logan to reinforce them with magic. But without letting him finish, Logan uses his agility spell, his technical and magic spell, to support the girls, knowing Orhun's orders are what anyone would give, which makes him think maybe he's nothing special after all. But that doesn't change what he has to do, so he focuses on boosting the girls' abilities with his support magic. Once he's taken care of Caroline, Logan notices that Sophia is too scared to move. He recalls her previous account of being attacked by orcs, understanding now that she's too traumatized to engage in battle. Logan sees that Orhun isn't doing anything to help her and thinks he can't count on him for even that, so he'll have to save her himself. But just then, Orhun uses a spell to decelerate the orc, weakening and slowing it down in an instant. He then approaches Sophia and reassures her, reminding her that she has her companions Caroline and Logan, as well as himself, right there by her side, so she's no longer alone and nothing bad will happen to her. Sophia manages to calm down and decides to give it her all, launching a powerful fire spell at the orc. This surprises everyone, including Orhun, but Sophia ends up exhausted. Orhun remains somewhat rattled since no one had mentioned that the girl possessed advanced magic abilities. Caroline immediately forgets what she was doing and runs to Sophia to tell her how amazing that was. Orhun also praises her, so Sophia quickly recovers, happy that it worked out. Logan observes everything in disbelief, knowing Orhun was the one who applied that weakening effect to the orc, which makes his expulsion from the hero's party even more confusing. Ultimately, they arrive at the 35th floor and encounter a massive death tarantula. But Logan immediately feels they are not nearly strong enough to contend with such a creature. However, Orhun calmly tells him to cast an agility and durability spell on Caroline and boost Sophia's magic. Logan is taken aback by receiving the same old orders since this is no ordinary enemy. But without giving him time to think about it, Caroline runs straight toward the death tarantula, so Logan tries to stop her. Orhun asks him to wait, explaining he'd be at a disadvantage if he goes first. He then tells Caroline to lure it out. She diligently follows his precise instructions, managing to effortlessly cut the tarantula's back, and so he asks Orhun to maintain its full attention on her. He warns her that the death tarantula is highly venomous, so she must carefully observe its attacks and make sure to dodge them effectively. Logan swiftly casts his support magic upon her, enabling Caroline to expertly evade every single one of the tarantula's attacks. After blocking one of the attacks with her daggers, Caroline backs away, making sure to keep the tarantula's attention on herself. The death tarantula follows her, and Orhun reminds Logan that Caroline's mobility depends on him, so he must support her. Logan stays focused on that, so Orhun asks Sophia to immobilize it. Sophia doesn't waste any time and uses her staff to launch an attack called Arrow Cutter, which manages to sever 4 of the tarantula's legs in an instant. Ah, it fell! The death tarantula drops immediately, so Caroline celebrates victory, but Orhun warns them it's not yet finished. Without any explanation, he tells Logan to grant Caroline more strength and technical skill. Logan doesn't understand why, but he follows the instructions and uses his support magic on Caroline. But just then, the death tarantula shoots its webs at Caroline, instantly trapping her and dragging her in to be eaten. Logan panics as he watches Caroline get slowly dragged towards the tarantula's mouth. But Orhun remains completely calm and instructs Caroline to sever the webs with her daggers, as she has become sufficiently strong now. Caroline desperately tries to move her arms to cut the webs with her daggers, and Logan begins to wonder if Orhun had given those orders because he knew this would transpire. Orhun then asks Sophia to prepare a rock arrow, instructing Logan to give her another magic boost as the previous one is about to expire. Logan quickly complies, but Caroline starts to panic even more, exclaiming that she's unable to cut through the webs. Orhun observes the situation, knowing that Logan can only use 3 spells at once, so he has no choice but to intervene. He decides to use Philo, enhancing Caroline's daggers, which finally allows her to cut through the webs. Once free, Sophia casts Rock Arrow, defeating the death tarantula with a single blow. Caroline runs to her and celebrates as usual, and Orhun praises Logan for his work, saying this all worked thanks to his support magic. Logan thanks him, and Orhun tells them it's time to head back. Once outside, Selma reminds them that tomorrow is their last day, so they should rest well to be ready. Meanwhile, before Orhun leaves, Werner and Anthem approach him and invite him to get something to eat with them. Orhun is a little surprised they want him to join, and he notices they don't seem bothered by his presence, which is a very good sign. Thus, he decides to accept, acknowledging they have few chances to converse while exploring, making this a great opportunity to socialize. Concurrently, Logan inquires of Sophia about Orhun saving her, and she, bewildered, recounts it happened 3 days prior in a freshly discovered dungeon. Logan asks if he was entirely on his own, and when she confirms this, he then asks her to tell him about his movements. Sophia doesn't really know what to say, so Logan asks if she remembers what spells he used or how he fought. Sophia tries her very best to recall the details and tells him there was an incredible wind attack he used against the orcs. He also did something that seemed to enhance his sword with support magic to fight. Logan assumes that was Philo, knowing it is a support spell that applies to weapons, not to people. Caroline gets excited and comments that he used that today too, because her daggers became much sharper in an instant, and she was honestly surprised. Logan asks Sophia if Orhun was using a sword when he saved her, and Sophia says yes, explaining he was cutting down the orcs. Logan understands that Orhun can apparently fight with a sword, not just with magic. Sophia tells him she truly doesn't know why, but after leaving the hero group, he transformed into a frontline attacker. That surprises Logan, but he quickly says it doesn't make sense, because today he acted like a perfect enchanter. Remembering Orhun's performance in the dungeon today, Logan realizes he completely misjudged him this morning. When he discovered Orhun had been banished from the hero group, he was filled with disappointment and anger, feeling as though Orhun had truly betrayed his expectations. Yet, in the clash with those orcs, Orhun stealthily cast a slowdown spell, a debuff that diminishes an opponent's capabilities, essentially nerfing them, and he did it with effortless ease. Indeed, even Selma rarely uses such spells, finding them difficult to wield, yet Orhun seemed to use it with utmost ease. And then there's the fierce battle with the Death Tarantula on the 35th floor, which marked Logan's initial realization of just how crucial formations truly are. If the defender can keep the enemy distracted, then the attacker and support can fully focus on their next move. That's truly the ideal way to fight, and Orhun also knew precisely when the buffs he bestowed upon his companions would expire. He even predicted the Death Tarantula's final attack when Caroline got trapped in the webs. Orhun was meticulously analyzing how the battle would unfold and issuing flawless commands, demonstrating he is truly leagues above him. Knowing that, Logan doesn't understand why he would become a frontline attacker. Caroline asks Sophia if Orhun is also strong as a frontline attacker, and she tells her yes. Sophia reminds them that, like she said this morning, Orhun took down more than a dozen orcs in an instant. Caroline is easily impressed and states her desire to quickly become as strong as him. Sophia concurs, assuring her that she too will grow stronger, so they both must strive to do their best. Logan remains silent once more, still analyzing the situation and the reality that Orhun is, quite surprisingly, also a formidable frontline attacker. He knows that's what a true genius is like, but he's not going to give up anyway, so... Stronger. Caroline interrupts his thoughts, telling him he has a truly frightening expression at that moment. She asks if he's tired or something of the sort, or perhaps he's plotting something against humanity. Well then, Logan snaps out of his thoughts and tells her he was just getting hyped up for tomorrow. Caroline gets excited to hear he's ready because Caroline is always excited, so she decides to get hyped up too. Meanwhile, Bernard and Anthem tell Orhun that they'll pay for today's meal so he can eat as much as he wants. Orhun thanks them, but Bernard, short and to the point, says he was in the hero group and must have partied a lot. Orhun tells him it wasn't like that at all and explains that he was stuck doing all the errands and various minor jobs, so he didn't really have much time for fun. Anthem says that sounds rough, and Bernard comments that it makes the article even worse, because there was no need to portray him like that. Anthem agrees with him, telling Orhun to simply let it go. Orhun admits that just hearing them say that truly makes him happy, and he profusely thanks them for it. Anthem mentions he was actually an enchanter in the hero group, but he told them he was a frontline attacker when they first met. Bernard also expresses his curiosity about it and truly wants to know which of the two he actually is. Orhun explains that he uses a sword now because he became a frontline attacker after leaving the hero group. He remembers that he was also a swordsman in the hero group and that he wanted to be one more than anything since he was a kid, so he was really happy when he got that position. Anthem asks if maybe one of his parents was a swordsman since, well, it's something he wanted since he was little. Orhun clarifies it was his grandfather. He was an explorer, and one day a monster appeared in his village, which he defeated with a single sword stroke. After seeing that, he wanted to become a swordsman, so he worked as hard as he could to achieve it. Anthem asks why he became an enchanter, wanting so badly to be a swordsman. Orhun explains that it happened when the hero group started descending to the lower floors and their pace began to slow down. The monsters grew significantly stronger on those lower levels, naturally causing their progress to slow. Yet the group failed to grasp this, and eager to advance swiftly, they soon took an interest in the enchanters, who were then gaining widespread popularity. Since he was an all-rounder capable of doing anything, they chose him to be the enchanter. Anthem understands it was for the group's sake, but points out that he still made it to the 94th floor, so it was the right call. But Orhun disagrees, stating it wasn't the ideal approach, because even after changing roles, they ought to have taken more time to strengthen themselves first. Bernard and Anthem look a little confused by what he's saying, and Orhun realizes he might have said too much. He quickly backtracks and apologizes, admitting he's being a bit harsh on his old group. Realizing he can't elaborate further, he chooses to conclude the discussion at that point. However, he remains convinced that the hero group will be unable to progress beyond the 94th floor, a thought he intends to keep to himself. Bernard tries to change the subject and asks him what his ideal swordsman would be, hoping he'll tell them. Orhun ponders for a moment before responding that his ideal swordsman would be an incredibly versatile one. Anthem and Bernard appear somewhat confused, so Orhun clarifies that such a swordsman could basically single-handedly conquer even the lowest dungeon floors. That's exactly what he aspires to be, and the precise reason he made the choice to transition into a frontline attacker. Despite their initial surprise, Anthem and Bernard smile and tell him that knowing him, they're sure he'll achieve it. In another scene, after arriving home, Caroline and Sophia decide to take a shower to relax after a long day. Caroline mentions that their teaching expedition ends tomorrow, and that will mean saying goodbye to Orhun. Sophia knows this, but still tries to process that she won't see him after tomorrow. She wishes he'd stay with the Night Sky Rabbits, and Caroline tells her she should ask him. She assures her that he'll probably agree if she asks him, just like Selma always gets him to do. Sophia swiftly informs Caroline that Orhun isn't like her sister, and asking him to remain would be far too selfish, so she's quite certain it wouldn't even succeed regardless. Despite this, Sophia can't help but feel it would be terribly sad not to see him again after this teaching expedition and all he's done for her, so she begins to contemplate the idea of speaking with him the very next time their paths cross. The following day, numerous people gather before the Great Dungeon, and all eyes turn as they recognize the famed hero group has made their grand entrance. Oliver, with his head held high, proudly walks alongside the other members of the group. However, Luna appears to be the only one among them who is not happy. Finally, the last day of the expedition arrives, and Orhun knows today will be the last time he sees this scenery. Soon, Group 10 approaches to greet him, and this time Logan seems more excited than before. Caroline mentions she'd be happy if they received a reward for their achievement. Logan asks if there's anything she wants, and Caroline confidently confirms, reminding Sophia of their earlier conversation. Sophia knows what she's talking about, but she starts to panic and decides to stay quiet. Caroline insists anyway, saying Sophia wants something from him too. Orhun asks what it is, so Sophia tries to work up the courage to say it, but she's interrupted by Selma, who asks Orhun for help. Meanwhile, some inexperienced rookies are excitedly chatting about the new heroes, claiming they've heard whispers that they'll be venturing into the dungeon's deepest reaches today. Apparently, they're starting on the 92nd floor because they need to see how they work together as a new group. Orhun overhears their conversation, but it strikes him as quite odd. If they want to see how they work together, they should start on the lower floors, not the deepest parts of the dungeon. But that's not his problem anymore, so he just decides to ignore it. Meanwhile, on the 92nd floor of the Great Southern Dungeon, Oliver says it's time for the reborn hero party to have its first adventure because that loser isn't holding them back anymore. They have a new teammate now, and their goal is to clear the Great Southern Dungeon. The new enchanter thanks them for accepting her, and Derek asks her to show them what she can do. Annalie assures him she'll be fine because she's not like that all-rounder who was slowing them down. Luna remains completely silent throughout, yet Oliver thinks that even she'll grasp after this dungeon expedition that they were correct the whole time. In a scene change, we see a flashback to 2 days ago when the new enchanter introduces herself as Philly Carpenter. Oliver points out she's a skilled adventurer, having made it to the 100th floor of the Great Western Dungeon, and she'll be the group's very first true enchanter. Philly expresses gratitude for the amazing welcome party they arranged for her, and Derek declares it's time to celebrate, seeing as Orhun is no longer with them. He also mentions he was surprised to see the accounts they were managing because it turns out they had quite a bit of money. Annalie says she just doesn't get why he was so incredibly stingy since money's no good if you don't spend it. Philly, with a bit of hesitation, questions if that money wasn't for their group's activities. However, Oliver interrupts her, declaring they'd discussed Orhun enough as this was her welcome party. Everyone decides to cheer up, but just then Luna suddenly appears, saying she needs to check on something. She doesn't recognize Philly at all, yet Oliver prompts her to proceed, and Luna shares that she'd heard Orhun was headed to the Great Dungeon, joining the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. Oliver is clearly taken aback by this news, and Annalie immediately grows defensive, questioning how it was possible for him to join the Rabbits so quickly in just 3 days. Derek speculates if that good-for-nothing still believes he's S-rank, especially after being informed of his utter weakness, but Luna appears completely oblivious to the conversation. She then inquires about the events that transpired during her absence, only for Oliver to calmly instruct her to remain composed. Annalie cuts in and tells her that the all-rounder left the party 3 days ago. Oliver confirms it, and Luna feels hurt to learn that he finally abandoned them. Derek quickly interjects, remarking that she's making it seem as though they were the ones who were abandoned, but it's actually the opposite. They were the ones who dismissed that so-called all-rounder. Luna's expression changes instantly, but Oliver confirms it without any regret and introduces her to their new enchanter and Orhun's replacement. Luna calmly mentions that she wished she had made it clear she was against anyone taking Orhun's place, but Oliver tells her she has to understand that Orhun is simply not strong enough for them anymore. Luna tells him she doesn't understand any of that because Orhun is clearly the core of this party. They only made it to this point thanks to him, so they cannot progress further if he is not there. Annalie informs her that while she might view that all-rounder as someone extraordinary, the others don't share that opinion, and it's already far too late, as no amount of argument will alter the situation. Despite her obvious frustration, Luna concedes that it's indeed too late, and Oliver feels relieved that she's finally ceased her protests. Since everyone's gathered, he decides to talk about their immediate plans, as this is the first time Philly will be working with them. So in 2 days, they'll test how they work together on the 92nd floor, and if all goes well, they'll move on to the 94th floor. Luna immediately makes it clear that she's dead set against this, as she has no intention of ending up deceased. After all, even if Philly is a very skilled enchanter, they should really learn to work together on a much lower floor first. The others don't get what she's talking about, and Derek reminds her they've already reached the 93rd floor, so the 92nd floor should be a breeze. Luna reminds them there's a black dragon down there, and they barely managed to defeat it last time. Derek assures her that was because Orhun was there, and Annalie agrees, saying that without that all-rounder holding them back, it'll be easy. Luna clarifies that she doesn't want them to misunderstand and warns them that the Black Dragon is far more powerful than they are. Oliver cuts her off, stating their objective is merely to observe their teamwork, thus they won't engage the dragon. Derek, however, disputes this, insisting they will indeed fight. Luna then attempts to caution them, explaining it's far too perilous to venture to those lower levels without Orhun. Oliver doesn't let her finish and clarifies that it's already been decided, so she has no right to refuse. Back in the present, they're fighting the monster on the 92nd floor, but Oliver notices his sword can't hurt it. He quickly dodges to avoid being struck by the monster, but his body begins to feel incredibly heavy. He realizes that each time his boosters dissipate, it's as if his entire body becomes burdened with immense weight, and he simply cannot continue under these conditions. Oliver asks Philly why the boosters keep vanishing, and she nervously apologizes, stating she still hasn't grasped how they all fight collectively as a team. Oliver is surprised it's taking her so much time to understand, considering Orhun had grasped everything in just about an hour on their very first day. Derek uses his shield to block the monster's attack, but he ends up being... He doesn't understand what's happening because he used to block things like this without any trouble. Annalie decides to use a fire spell to attack, but it does absolutely nothing to the monster. Her attack is so weak that even Oliver thinks she's just joking, but she assures him she's doing it just like she always does. Oliver then asks Philly to buff Annalie, but Philly informs him that she already has. He asks her to do it again, and Philly readily agrees, but Annalie's attack spells remain just as weak as ever, leaving her no other option but to withdraw from the monster. Oliver doesn't get what's going on because Philly's support magic is supposed to be much more powerful than Orkon's. The monster continues to attack them, and Derek can barely keep blocking the hits. Oliver swiftly instructs Annalie to flank the monster, but it easily detects her presence and attacks without delay. Annalie panics, having never experienced this situation before, yet Oliver holds his ground, instructing Philly to observe the monster's next attack and warn them. Philly tells him that's impossible, but Oliver reminds her that an enchanter's job is to keep an eye on everything and understand the flow of battle. Philly apologizes, saying this is all she can do right now as she casts her support magic. Annalie, without hesitation, deems her useless. Oliver, meanwhile, frantically tries to figure out their next move, given that Derek and Annalie aren't at their usual strength, and he himself is unable to channel the power of his sword today. In theory, Philly's support magic should have greatly increased their physical abilities, so he's completely perplexed as to why they are still so weak. Luna can't believe he still doesn't get it, so Oliver asks her to explain what's happened to them. Annalie is just angry that she hasn't said it already, since they're all party members and could die. Luna has no choice but to explain, but before she can reveal why they're weaker, everyone is frozen in shock as the Black Dragon abruptly materializes at the worst possible moment. Oliver is bewildered by the sight, as the Black Dragon is never supposed to venture outside the boss's designated territory. When the Black Dragon lands in front of them, Luna immediately tells them they have to run and get out of there. Derek stubbornly refuses and Annalie agrees, confidently saying she'll take it down. Luna warns them they can't possibly defeat it. But Oliver tells her there's no time to argue, reminding her they've already defeated it once and can do so again. Luna looks at him as if he's lost his mind, but the group attempts to fight the dragon before she can prevent them. Derek tries to block the first attack with his shield, but the impact from the dragon's fire knocks him down immediately. Luna quickly uses her magic to heal him, and Oliver asks Philly why she did not buff Derek. It was at that very moment that he noticed Philly had become utterly paralyzed by the shock and was completely unresponsive. Oliver gets even more confused, wondering why an enchanter more powerful than Orkun would react that way. Annalie, without hesitation, unleashes her fire javelin at the dragon, yet her spell fails to leave even a mark. The black dragon retaliates with its fiery breath, and though she attempts to take cover behind some rocks, the inferno incinerates them completely within a few seconds. Annalie falls defeated, and Oliver still doesn't understand what's happened to everyone. Luna warns him they need to retreat and tells him to calm down because they can't win this fight and will end up wiped out at this rate. The black dragon prepares its most powerful breath attack, so Luna asks him to buy them some time because they need to get out as soon as possible. Oliver reacts quickly and tells Philly to wake up, snapping her out of her shock. Once she finally responds, he asks her for a buff, and with that he decides to use magic convergence. Oliver gets ready to attack, but Luna tries to warn him that he needs more magic convergence. He simply tells her there's no time and attacks the black dragon with his divine flash attack. Oliver's attack clashes with the dragon's breath, creating a powerful explosion that knocks him back. However, the black dragon remains unscathed, leaving him defeated and confused. Luna quickly rushes over to check on him, but Oliver simply asks her what they should do. He's clearly distressed, yet Luna reminds him that he is indeed the leader, so it is his responsibility to decide what action they will take. She tells him to pull himself together as the dragon begins to prepare another attack, so Luna says they have no choice but to use the whimsical gate. It is a magical item specifically for emergency escapes, usable exclusively within the confines of dungeons. It can only forcibly open a link between where it's used and another location. Oliver hesitates, and Philly warns him it will transport them to a random boss area, somewhere between the dungeon's upper and lower floors. That means they'll be facing another floor boss as soon as they go through. Luna clarifies that it's still much better than fighting the black dragon since it's a boss from the deepest levels. Oliver finally makes his decision, and everyone quickly gathers around him just before he uses the magical item. As soon as the gate opens, the black dragon charges after them, blocking the path with fire. The gate suddenly expands, letting the dragon through before closing, leaving them completely safe. Everyone is left speechless, but Derek just chuckles, asserting their safety. Luna quickly admonishes him, stating that this is the absolute worst outcome imaginable. At that moment, Oliver realizes this means the black dragon has been transported to another boss area. Luna warns them that many adventurers are about to be attacked by a black dragon, completely unaware of its presence. Philly remarks that she had no clue a floor boss could even utilize a whimsical gate, but Luna informs them they must return to the guild and arrange for everyone to be forcibly teleported out. Forced teleportation, a feature of guild cards, enables one to forcefully remove someone, and that's their only option left now. Oliver hesitates because he knows they'll suffer some kind of penalty from the guild if they use forced teleportation. However, he understands this is no time to worry about that, so he decides to act. Another hits Annalie and Derek. This places Oliver in an even more challenging predicament, so he opts to await his comrades while Luna employs her healing magic on them. She tells him that after requesting the forced teleportation, they'll have to face the black dragon immediately. Oliver agrees, but Luna tells him they should alternate Philly and Orhun when they do so. He really doesn't like the idea of Orhun having to clean up his mess, but they clearly need his help right now. Derek immediately refuses to ask for help, but Luna explains that before the black dragon appeared, she was about to tell them why they were so weak. The truth is, they're exactly the same as they've always been, and nothing has changed. That revelation stuns Oliver, prompting him to ask why they're so utterly weak if even his most powerful attack, the Divine Flash, couldn't even scratch the black dragon. Luna tells them the answer is simple. It's because they don't have Orhun. He had barely done any magic convergence back there, and that's how weak Divine Flash is under those circumstances. Luna asks him if he knows what all support magic has in common, and Oliver replies that the amount a stat is increased is decided by the caster, and the time a buff lasts is decided by the receiver. An enchanter is required to recast a buff before its duration expires, and the typical lifespan of a buff is approximately 3 minutes. Philly tells him that's generally true, but their combined magical resistance is exceptionally high, which means any buff will only last for a maximum of 2 minutes on them. For Oliver, she can't maintain a buff for more than a minute. Oliver comments that he's never heard that from anyone, but Luna explains that his body makes him incompatible with any enchanter, and that Orhun did a fantastic job handling it anyway. Oliver argues that Philly should also be capable of it, given her superior talent compared to Orhun, who is clearly less potent than other enchanters. Luna clarifies that Orhun already knew that, which is why he developed several types of original magic to compensate for his limitations. All the members are shocked to hear this because they didn't think he was capable of something like that, but Luna assures them she isn't lying. Once she finishes healing them, Luna says that's all she can do for now, because they're short on time and need to hurry. The group starts running quickly, and Oliver mentions that Orhun did say something about creating original magic, but he was still much weaker than other enchanters. Luna tells him that's not true, explaining that one of the original spells he developed has the capability to amplify power by more than 50 times. Oliver is clearly surprised, and Philly insists that such a feat is impossible. She reminds them that even Selma of the Night Sky Silver Rabbit stated she could only boost it tenfold. Luna assures her it's true, and Oliver realizes that his Divine Flash required Orhun's support magic. She promptly confirms this, stating that his Divine Flash and Annalie's offensive magic were amplified by that 50-fold surge. However, that made them arrogant, and he ceased dedicating as much effort to gathering magical energy. Had he invested more time in his magic convergence, he might have at least succeeded in knocking the Black Dragon from the sky. The same applies to Annalie, as she believed the attacks aided by Orhun's support magic were effective purely due to her own strength. Lately, she has only been resorting to easy mid-range spells, under the false impression that they were sufficiently powerful. She might not be able to use special spells requiring time and focus anymore. Annalie didn't know that was possible, and Derek realizes that Orhun was also supporting his defenses. Luna confirms this, stating that Orhun's unique magic also impacts both equipment and spells, meaning that when his buffs faded, their bodies shouldn't have abruptly felt any heavier than before. The three of them are surprised by this, but Luna clarifies that she said the same thing many times before, so they should have understood by now. Oliver finally acknowledges the truth, but mentions that it's too late now. Once they get out of the dungeon, many adventurers recognize them, having no idea what just happened. They're seen as heroes, but Oliver knows that nothing could be further from the truth, because they put all the adventurers inside the dungeon in danger. They have no right to be called heroes even though they defeated the Black Dragon once, but then again, he was the one who defeated it. Thus, he stubbornly holds the belief that the hero group will be perfectly fine without Orhun. Some people just don't learn, and with that, episode 4 comes